Welcome back, awesome students of grade 12. It's great that you joined me again today with Unit 1 North Star, the fantastic plastic brain. Okay, we're going to focus today on listening to, the merits of unitasking. Boy, that is about a multitasking or unitasking. Two different things that we're going to listen to today. We start off with the vocabulary. Now, as I told you in the last video, is that our vocabulary per unit is compiled in a list at the back of our book, awesomely made. And you can look at that in the listening and speaking book that is on page 251. Unit 1 has the words affected, animates, astounding, authenticated, best, and the brightest, buy into, competency, degrade, fool oneself into thinking, go through, incrementally, ingenuity, meticulous, perceive, register, renders, rewire, rigorous, skeptics, and task shifting. Okay, those are the words and phrases compiled for this unit. Please take a look. It is very important that you incorporate those words in your writing project and speaking project. So basically in both projects, you gotta use the vocabulary from the unit and also the grammar that you have learned in that unit. Okay, since this is project-based learning. Okay, we go back to number 1. Here you will see the bold-faced words which are part of your vocabulary. The first one is task shifting, competency, and then we've got fooled ourselves into thinking. And then on the next page, we've got bought into, and last but not least, degrades. Okay, now I'm gonna move back. You're going to read the sentences, and you'll hear the bold-faced words and phrases in the next listening section. And I want you to notice them as you listen. So I'd like you to take a little bit of time to read through the sentences. You can do that out loud, which will help you with your pronunciation. You can pause your video and do that one. Great. Now we continue with number 2. Now you're going to match the words and phrases on the left, which is number 1 until 5, with the definitions or synonyms on the right side, which are A, B, C, D, and E. Now write the corresponding letter in the blank. Miss Sylvia, I have a problem. I really don't know what it means. Well, you can use a search engine to look it up. No problem there. It is awesome if you have the initiative to look things up and look for things, understanding them. That is a very good way of learning. So if you need to look it up, go ahead. Let's do number 1 together. Task shifting. Is that A, B, C, D, or E? What do you guys think? Yeah, great. E, of course. Changing from one thing to another. That focuses on the shifting, right? Like going from one to another. Awesome. Okay, so you can do number 2, 3, 4, and 5. Pause your video and answer it now. Next point is comprehension. You're going to listen to the interview, and IT professor Sherry Turkle offers her opinions about multitasking. Now, what I want you to do is check all the statements that represent her point of view, meaning that you are going to check 3 numbers. Okay, 3. Gotta listen very carefully. Now, how do we do this? First off, comprehension means that you try to understand what a person is saying. So we're focusing on understanding. How do we do that? By focusing on main points, on factors. Before you're going to listen, I want you to annotate, as we talked about, in our last video, annotating is the underlining and, all right, circling or highlighting. Yeah, of course. And why do we do that? Yeah, to build focus. Well said. Okay, so that's what you're going to do right now. You can pause your video to do that. That was quickly done by you. Good. I'm going to turn on the audio, and while you're listening, you're going to check the numbers of the statements that represent MIT Professor Sherry Turkle's point of view. And the reason why I wanted you to annotate is because you're going to listen, you have to read, and you have to make a choice to answer. These are 3 things you have to do at once. If you don't annotate first, it is too hard for you to do all 3 things at once. And I believe that now you can do that. Let's try it out.
We believed for so long that multitasking was a 21st century alchemy, that we could make more time by doing all of these things together. And quite frankly, the education community bought into this myth. We did treat it. We said things like teachers would learn how to multitask so they could keep up with their students because this was such an important learning skill. And now we know the research is clear that we can multitask, but we degrade our performance for every task we multitask.
Well, Sherry, technically we can't multitask, right? The brain is not capable of doing
yes,
two cognitive
but you can
tasks.
choose to multitask. What I mean is, you can choose to do what looks to you like multitasking.
Where in fact you're task shifting.
Yes.
You're moving from one thing to another.
Absolutely, totally correct precision. You can fool yourself into thinking that you're doing something cold that looks to you like multitasking. And what's tricky about this is that the brain rewards you neurochemically when you do this, so that as you do this activity of shifting back and forth and getting your emails as you're writing, as you're doing the presentation, as you're this, as you're that, the kind of mini tragedy here is that you feel you're doing better and better at everything, even as your productivity and competency in everything is degrading. And that may be okay if you're shifting back and forth from your email to your filling in your date book, but it's really not okay when you want to get something serious done. And people know that when they want to get something serious done, they have to turn it off. So Tony's saying more sleep, and I'm saying that we really need to retrain ourselves to make it okay to do one thing at a time, to train ourselves to be unitaskers. And I think that is the challenge for both individuals and corporations in the years ahead, is to put a new value on unitasking.
Okay, that was the audio. And well, the cool thing about this is that Professor Sherry doesn't speak too fast, so that is easy to follow. Take the pick of the 3 statements that represent her opinion. Pause your video and answer. Okay, we continue with the listening skill. We're going to talk about a little bit about reviewing assumptions and listening for revisions. Now, what is an assumption? If you look at that, an assumption is a thing that is accepted as true or as certain to happen, even though there is no proof. You think that it will happen. That's why from the word assumption, we have the word assuming, predicting something to happen. Okay? It's the action of taking on a responsibility, doing something because you think that something will happen or result into something. If you have an assumption that it's going to rain, you probably will bring an umbrella or something. Yeah? So an assumption is some kind of prediction that you make. Okay? Revision means things that are repeated, things that come back. Yeah, or maybe they come back in a different way, but the content is the same. Now, in the second listening, Professor Sherry Turkle debunks the myth that multitasking, which is doing several things at once, is a skill that promotes effective performance. She believes that we need to value unitasking, which means you do one thing at a time, the art of doing one thing at a time. We should value that more than we do multitasking. She supports her thesis with statements that revise previously held beliefs and assumptions. So this means that before, people or even scientists held the belief, thought and believed and assumed that multitasking was the better way to do things. Now, after Professor Sherry Turkle having done her research, she comes up with the idea that unitasking is far better. Okay, now read and listen to the example and then answer the question. Let's listen.
Example.
We believed for so long that multitasking was a 21st century alchemy, that we could make more time by doing all of these things together. And now we know the research is clear that we can multitask, but we degrade our performance for every task we multitask.
Yeah, that is what she believes and assumes based on her research. Now, the earlier belief is that multitasking was efficient and effective. Now, what language does Turkle use to introduce the revised belief? The new belief. See, before the belief was A and now it has become B. So a revision is a change, evolving, right? So what language shows the revised belief? Yeah. So here it says that she introduces a revised belief by saying, and now we know. The phrase, and now we know, means that the old assumption or the old belief is no longer valid. There's a new one. Number 2, what is the revised belief? It says here that the revised belief is multitasking is not effective, and in fact our performance worsens when we multitask, promoting the idea of unitasking, which is far better, based on the research and the viewpoint of Professor Sherry Turkle. So, an assumption is what is believed and thought, and a revision is a change, in this case a change of belief, based on research. Yes. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to listen to Turkle's comments, and you are going to identify the language that is used to introduce the revised belief and then paraphrase the new belief in a single sentence. I think it is a good idea to do that together. There are 3. We do the number 1 together. Let's listen.
Excerpt 1.
Yes, but you can choose to multitask. What I mean is, you can choose to do what looks to you like multitasking.
Where in fact you're task shifting.
Yes.
2 people talking at once. So the earlier belief is that people can look like they are multitasking in certain situations. They do a lot of things at the same time, and they believe that they do all of them correctly and good, with good results. Well, the language used to introduce the revised belief, now they don't believe that. Now they believe in unitasking, that you can't do everything at once, then all with the same quality. Result. That's basically. So there's this revised belief. Now, what language is used to introduce that revised belief? What did you hear? Okay. Where, in fact. When you listen to the audio, you hear her say, where, in fact, that's where they show the revised belief. That's where they show the opposite. That's where they show, with this phrase, where, in fact, shows the contrast, the change. So you could say, for example, if you would want to revise that and say that, you could say they are not multitasking. They are task shifting or moving from one task to another very quickly. That's basically what it is. That's the revised belief. I'd like you to try excerpt 2 and excerpt 3. Let's start with excerpt 2.
Excerpt 2.
And you can fool yourself into thinking that you're doing something cold that looks to you like multitasking. And what's tricky about this is that the brain rewards you neurochemically when you do this. So that as you do this activity of shifting back and forth and getting your emails as you're writing, as you're doing the presentation, as you're this, as you're that, the kind of mini tragedy here is that you feel you're doing better and better at everything, even as your productivity and competency in everything is degrading.
Okay. Pause your video and try to answer excerpt 2. Excerpt 3.
Excerpt 3.
And that may be okay if you're shifting back and forth from your email to your filling in your date book. But it's really not okay when you want to get something serious done, and people know that when they want to get something serious done, they have to turn it off.
Pause your video and answer excerpt 3. Awesome, well done. Okay, we come to the last part of this video, which is connect the listening. So basically we're gonna look at listening 1 and the audio that we heard in listening 1, combining or connecting it with the audio that we heard in listening 2. The first step is organizing. Now, both speakers, Dr. Dodge and Dr. Turkle, focus on brain functioning. Yet each addresses the topic from a slightly different perspective, very different audio. Yeah. Now imagine that you have interviewed both Dodge and Turkle for a variety of tips for effective brain functioning. Unfortunately, your notes are a mess, and now you can't remember who said what. Okay. Kick your frontal lobe into action right now and use your best analytical and problem solving skills to figure out who said what. Write the appropriate tip in the speech bubble above the appropriate photo on the next page. So, tips for effective brain functioning. We've got the first one: face a wall when working. Turn off all social media links if you want to get something done while on your computer. Take a different route to school or work at least twice a week. Memorize phone numbers instead of putting them automatically in your mobile phone. Take one very interesting photo each day. Take a nap each day. Stir your coffee or tea backwards after putting in sugar or milk. And learn how to juggle. Now, let's see. Which one falls in which one? Now, if we look at the next page, you see the speech bubbles, and there you can put them in. There are exactly 8 speech bullets, and there are 8 lines altogether above the heads of these 2 people. Pause your video to fill that one out. Go ahead. Well done. Okay, cool. That brings us to the next step, which is step 2, synthesizing, and this is the last thing for today's video. Synthesizing, as you remember, is when we are combining several sources to create a new one. Yeah, we've talked about this before. For example, when you do research and you have multiple sources, combining all these sources together and creating your own writing or creating your own speech, for example, that would be synthesizing, meaning that there is a connection of multiple sources or facts. But you don't just copy paste. You take that all together and you rewrite it and create a new complete whole. Yes. So that is also what we do here. We're looking at things that we got from listening 1 and then things that we got from listening 2, and how can we connect both listenings and critically analyze that to come up with information that was not really stated. Exactly. That means that you get an implied meaning, right? You do critical analysis to just dig a little bit deeper to get just more than just the things you heard. Exactly. Is that important? Of course it is. Everything in a lesson is important, right? Ha. Okay. Now, here it says work with a partner. We're not going to do that, sadly. Soon enough, we will. Imagine you're either Dr. Deutz or Dr. Turkle. You are giving a talk together about effective brain functioning to 200 professionals between the ages of 65 and 85 years old. That's something. Now, below are two slides. Both of you will use the left one and the right one. Practice by telling each other what you intend to say about each of the slides. So you can use steps here. It gives you steps from step 1 on the previous page. And you ask questions to get further information. Now, in this case, you would have to say something about both slides and connect it. Yeah. For example, student A, on this slide, you see at a point, one would like, the point I would like to make here is blah, blah, blah. And student B would say, could you be a bit more specific? I think you need to give an example. So what you're saying is, so basically in this case, you are trying to give a point or a view about each picture and explaining it with reasons why you hold that opinion. And you could ask each other, like, why do you have that opinion? What do you mean? Can you give an example? Or what you see here, so what you're trying to say is that you're trying to make sense of what somebody else says. Exactly. But sadly, we cannot do that today. But what I would like you to do is take a moment to pause your video and to just think about it. Like if you look at picture 1, what is it you could say about picture 1? And if you look at picture 2, what would come to mind to say about picture 2? Correlating it to listening 1 and listening 2. Exactly. Okay, that brought us to the end of our video today. We had a good time. Vocabulary was really clear with the 5 words that we focused on. And as you know, you can go back to the back of your book to figure out what the words were for today or for the whole unit. And we did a comprehension listening skill. What is an assumption? Something that you assume to be a thought or prediction, and revisions that focus on a change of mind, a change of thought. There's a shift or something that is revised, made different. Right. And the combination of the listenings that we did is how to see how the information and content of both listenings are still connected, and knowing the connections, and from there coming up with a conclusion or a different idea. That would be called synthesizing, the usage of multiple sources in order to create something new. After that, we use critical analysis. That's it. Well done. It was great for you to join today. I'm happy that you excitedly did the activities, and keep being excited. We'll meet again soon in our next video. I'm excited for that one. I'll see you soon. God bless you. Bye-bye.